everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on personalized medicine and what policymakers need to know. We know that healthcare is personal by nature. Clinicians, by definition, tailor their decisions and their approach to their patients' needs and their preferences and their circumstances, and that has always been the case. So when we talk about personalized medicine today, we base this on this paradigm, but we talk about an approach that makes use of scientific and technological advances to help us understand variability in disease and patient profiles better, and helps us tailor prevention, diagnostics, treatment better to individual needs. These scientific and technological advances encompass advances in areas such as genomics, molecular diagnostics, the use of health data, artificial intelligence, and all of these advances make it possible for us to deliver more precise care. And bringing these innovations together, personalized approaches really have the potential to transform the way health systems deliver services across the continuum of care, and of course, ultimately improve health outcomes. At the same time, of course, there are several questions that arise with these novel approaches. And they have to do with, of course, making sure that innovations reaches patients as quickly as possible, embedding personalized approaches as sustainably as possible in care, doing that equitably and in a way that ensures that everyone can benefit. And this equitable approach or lens refers both to within countries and across countries. And at the same time, of course, we need to ask ourselves how different stakeholders, policymakers, insurers, researchers, industry, patients, people can work together to ensure that we make that happen. So the timing of today's webinar is not a coincidence. We know that the EU's life sciences strategy recognizes that leadership in areas such as biotechnology, advanced medicinal therapies, and artificial intelligence are really key for Europe's health, but also for its competitiveness and its economic resilience. And there are several current and ongoing legislative proposals that aim to achieve the ultimate goal, which is not limited to developing new scientific knowledge, but also to transforming it into actual innovations that can flow into health systems and actually improve care. So we are at a juncture where personalized medicine and what comes with it are higher or high in the health policy agenda at the EU and in individual countries. And at the observatory last year, we published a policy brief that takes a comprehensive look at the prerequisites that we need to be able to embed personalized approaches meaningfully and equitably, and especially to the considerations for policymakers. And my colleague, Yulia Litvinova, who is our keynote speaker for today, will draw on that knowledge to anchor today's discussion. And then we will have three very interesting spotlight presentations from complementary voices. So we'll start with Ebba Hult from the Stockholm School of Economics, who will bring us a perspective from Sweden and also from perhaps particular areas where personalized medicine can be implemented. Then we will hear from Matteo Gentili, who is from the Fondazione Toscana Life Sciences and the European Partnership on Personalized Medicine. And finally, from Jule Berteman, from the Directorate General for Health of the European Commission. So before we embark on that hour-long journey with all of you, first of all, a little bit of housekeeping. We are very happy to have you here, and we really welcome your insights and your comments. Please use the chat to share those with us. My excellent colleague, Erica Richardson, is the master of the chat, and we're keeping an eye on that. But she's also the master of the polls. So before we begin, let me pass to Erica for today's poll to see how all of you are thinking about this topic. Erica, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dimi. So just a couple of questions to find out where we are with the audience, because there are a lot of you out there today. And firstly, just to get a feel for this, do you believe patients in your country are generally willing to share their genomic data for research and care? And that's a straightforward yes/no question. And then we're going to go into a little bit more detail and ask, in your country, in which areas of healthcare do you see personalized medicine already being applied, or indeed having the most potential? So is that in Pharmacogenomics, so tailoring drug selection and dosing to patients' genetic profiles, cancer care, so selecting treatments based on tumor genetic or molecular profiles and companion diagnostic tests, early detection and prevention, so that's using genetic risk assessment for cancer, heart disease, or other conditions. Is it in rare diseases? So diagnosing and treating rare genetic conditions through genomic testing. Is it in infectious diseases? So maybe using genetic information to guide antimicrobial choice and treatment. Is it in prenatal and reproductive health? So prenatal genetic screening and testing. Or is it none of the above, or indeed all of the above? So let us know, and I'll see you down there. I'll see you after Julia's presentation to let you know what everybody says. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Erica. So yes, everybody, please do participate now or in a bit, but in 20 seconds, I would like you to concentrate on what Julia will be talking about. So Julia, please come up. A very warm welcome to you. The keynotes for today is yours. Give us the landscape on personalized medicine and how we think about it today. Over to you.
Thank you, Dimi. Also, thank you for a very comprehensive introduction. Personalized medicine approaches indeed have shown great potential in research, but translating those benefits into health system-wide practice requires much more heavy lifting than scientific progress alone. So in the policy brief, we refer to the definition proposed in the 2015 EU Council conclusions. It describes personalized medicine as a medical model that uses individuals' phenotypes and genotypes to tailor the right therapeutic strategy for the right person at the right time, to determine predisposition to disease, and to provide timely and targeted prevention. Its scope also relates to the broader concept of patient-centered care. In other words, personalized medicine can shape health promotion, prevention, screening, and diagnosis, treatment, rehabilitation, and palliative care. So the issue for health systems is not whether personalized medicine exists, but whether the right conditions are in place to support implementation across the care continuum. In our brief, also, we grouped these conditions into 4 interlinked areas: ethical and social considerations, infrastructure and operational prerequisites, evidence generation and reimbursement, and policy and regulatory frameworks. So I like to think of these topics or topical areas as 4 gears, where the EU policy and action, since we're looking more at the European angle, can support the whole development. If one gear is weak, then system struggles, but when they move together, the implementation succeeds. My focus here today is on selected considerations for each topic that are especially important at health system level. The first gear of ethical and social considerations contains the oil for the whole machine, which is trust. Trust in how health data is used appears critical. Individuals are often willing to share data for direct care purposes, yet for broader forms of data use, transparent and trustworthy governance is essential, together with protection against misuse and data-driven discrimination. Consent models continue to evolve and can support that process. When they developed inclusively, they can help build trust and engagement. Although health literacy gaps and resource limitations remain important barriers. Shared decision-making is a cornerstone, but it requires careful design. While it can empower patients and give them autonomy, it can also become burdensome if it's not supported through communication tools and professional training of healthcare providers. Ethical governance, particularly when ensuring equitable access, needs to keep pace with technological and societal change, and it should also include diverse public voices in policy developments. The second gear is infrastructure and operational readiness. Biobanks are often foundational, not only because they support large-scale genomic research, but also because they have helped develop models for governance, consent, and collaboration that are increasingly relevant in wider data-driven health initiatives. Genomic testing infrastructure remains uneven across countries, and scaling it up will depend on clinical validation, quality assurance, infrastructure investment, and workforce training. Workforce development is in itself a major issue. Health professionals need not only specialist competencies in genomics, data management, or digital health, they also need cross-cutting skills such as communication and leadership. Electronic health records that can securely integrate clinical and genomic data are also critical. They support patient empowerment through greater access to one's own health information. Yet, fragmented or non-interoperable systems create bottlenecks rather than enabling innovation. Cybersecurity must also remain constantly in focus. Advanced computational models also hold great promise because they can translate large volumes of data into actionable insights, but their accuracy, validity, and transparency need careful validation and monitoring. So, investment in infrastructure is not only about technology, it's also about coordinated capacity building across institutions and professions. The third gear is evidence generation and reimbursement. Traditional clinical trial models are often poorly suited to small and stratified populations. So, more adaptive approaches and novel endpoints are increasingly being explored. Regulators, such as European Medicines Agency, offer pathways to support such innovation and guide trial sponsors in research, development, and later at authorization steps. Real-world evidence is also gaining traction as a complement to trial data. Data from electronic health records, registries, claims, wearables can support regulatory reimbursement and clinical decisions by reflecting outcomes in real-world settings. At the same time, methodological standards remain variable and questions of bias, quality, and interpretation persist. On the reimbursement side, systems need approaches that reflect the complex value of personalized medicine while also managing uncertainty. And this is where risk-sharing reimbursement models can become relevant. They are designed to give patients earlier access while also protecting payers when the evidence base is still developing or long-term outcomes not yet fully known. For example, coverage with evidence development is one of the examples. It also allows reimbursement while additional evidence is being generated, which can be particularly important when unmet need is high, but uncertainty around effectiveness or value remains. Managed entry agreements can also take performance, volume, or service-based forms, and in practice, they try to align payment more closely with actual use and observed outcomes or budget impact. Outcome-based rebates are relevant in personalized medicine because they link payment more directly to whether expected benefits are actually achieved in real-world care. So, innovative reimbursement is a way of managing uncertainty while evidence continues to develop. The fourth gear is an enabling policy and regulatory environment. In the European context, as Dimi also mentioned, personalized medicine is increasingly shaped by a broader and also evolving policy landscape. For example, data rules, they seek to balance strong protection with possibilities for further research and secondary use, like through European health data space, while also aiming to give citizens more control over their data and at the same time allowing researchers and innovators to access it in secure environments. Other legislations is shaping diagnostics, clinical trials, health technology assessment, AI, and more. Together, these developments create both opportunities and some new complexities. Thus, alignment of national policy frameworks with the overall EU agenda helps to account for the local context and ensure that everyone has an equal chance to benefit from these innovations. So if I leave you with 3 things to remember once my intense and packed 10 minutes are over, they're these. First, personalized medicine must be system ready and not technology only. With the right regulatory and operational foundations in place, these approaches can move from promise and innovation to routine care. Second, trusted data has to be foundation because interoperability, data quality, privacy protection, and public confidence are essential if these models are to work at scale. And third, evidence, payment, and equity have to evolve together so that innovation is supported by credible evidence generation, workable reimbursement, and deliberate efforts to avoid widening gaps in access. In short, personalized medicine is not only an innovation story, it is a story of readiness. Whether these are fixes to the ladder or ramp that needs to be installed or an elevator, as we see here in the slide. So thank you for your attention. Clearly, this was the selected version and set of considerations. You are welcome to learn more from the policy brief that probably Erica already posted the link in the chat for.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Julia, for this excellent presentation and summary, and for using one of the in the meantime, quite famous sketches from the Gastein Forum on the last slide to make us all excited for the next Gastein conference in September. I particularly like you highlighted basically across the presentation, a lot of the time when we talk about and think about personalized medicine, we think about the scientific and technological innovation side of it. But clearly, we also need policy innovation and organizational innovation in order to make the paradigm actually work and actually work the way we want it to, as a tool equitably available for everyone. So thank you very much for this. I think we keep that notion of innovation across the board. So it's personalization across the continuum and also innovation across the board, not just in terms of the science and technology, but also in terms of policy and how we actually make implementation work. So thank you very much. We come back to you in the overall discussion later, but first let's go to Erica, who will tell us what happened with the poll. Erica, over to you.
Hello, and thank you everyone for filling in the poll. Really interesting results because you've got a kind of mismatch. So it's not a given, seemingly, that people are willing to share their genomic data for research and care. But so that's happening on one level, there's this sort of like hesitancy potentially. But then on the other hand, the countries are pushing ahead with personalized medicine, particularly in the area of cancer care, which I think, and rare diseases. And that actually is really nice, I believe, Dimi, because it links quite nicely to what Emma's going to talk about next. So thank you, everyone. And keep your comments and questions coming in the chat. It's already getting quite lively in there. So I'll jump back down there now and speak to you soon.
Thank you, Erica. Indeed. And I think thinking back at when we were putting together the policy brief, indeed, we start by saying, usually when we think about personalized medicine, we think about oncology and rare diseases. And this is exactly what the poll showed us now, that this chimes with our audience today, absolutely. And it also introduces us very nicely to our first spotlight and to Ebba, who will talk to us about how things are in Sweden. And
thank you so much for this opportunity to share a little bit about Sweden's experience with a national policy transformation in childhood cancer, which is actually combining cancer and also rare disease, we could see, and particularly how we then moved precision medicine from pilot to standard of care. And I think you will hear in my short 5 minutes intervention how I highlight the takeaways that Julia just presented. Just to put this Swedish in context on why childhood cancer matters. So in Sweden, around 300 to 350 children are diagnosed with cancer every year. which is roughly 1 child per day. Survival is high, around 85 to 88%, but about 15% average still die, and many survivors face lifelong complications. So even in strong health systems, childhood cancer remains rare, complex, and with a high impact over a lifetime. And this creates a clear policy challenge. We must not only cure more children, but we have to cure them better. So since 2024, oh please, next slide please, I must say. So the policy shift then, from 2024, Sweden has implemented a key policy. Every child diagnosed with cancer is offered whole genome sequencing at diagnosis as part of routine care. And this was achieved through a stepwise government-supported process, moving from pilot to national implementation between 2021 and 2024. And importantly, this is not a standalone initiative. It is part of a broader system transformation through Genomic Medicine Sweden, GMS. So what is GMS? It's a national precision medicine infrastructure that brings together university hospitals and regions and clinicians, researchers, and patient organizations working together with the purpose to integrate advanced genomic diagnostics into routine healthcare. And this is not just about introducing sequencing, it is about connecting diagnostics, care, data, and research at national level. And they also collaborate internationally. So I would like to acknowledge and send my thanks to Genomic Medicine Sweden for what they're doing for patients across Sweden and for being also co-leads of our testbed Sweden for precision health cancer. So thanks specifically to Richard Rosenqvist-Brandell and Anders Edsjö. And so, next slide, please. With this policy initiative, what actually then changed for children? Before this policy, diagnostics were less precise, important genetic alterations were missed. Today, every child receives comprehensive genomic profiling at diagnosis. Results are discussed in molecular tumor boards. And importantly, around 50% of children show clinically actionable findings. In some cases, the diagnosis changes completely. More children can access targeted therapies. So this is really a shift from standardized care to personalized biology-driven care. Next slide, please. And a critical part of this policy is the Brainchild platform. In simple terms, it is the digital engine that turns genomic data into clinical decisions. It integrates genomics, clinical data, imaging, outcomes, supports tumor boards, treatment matching, and continuous learning. And here our key message for policymakers is that data only creates value when it is integrated into clinical workflows. This transformation was enabled by targeted public investment over time. So between 2021 and 2025, approximately 4 million euros were invested in a combined funding from research, innovation, and regional healthcare. And this is another, I think, important lesson that with relatively modest sustained investment can actually enable large system change if it's well coordinated. So from policy to practice, I would like to give you a real example to be very concrete. Just recently, a few weeks ago, experts from several countries came together around one single child. During a molecular tumor board in pediatric oncology, a complex case from Lithuania was discussed, together with colleagues from across Sweden and the Baltic countries. Because behind every clinical discussion is not just data about a child and but it's a family waiting for answers with their child. And this is, I think, what international collaboration means in practice. When expertise is connected across borders, the chances of making the right decision increase, especially in rare and complex cases. At Karolinska University Hospital, within the Comprehensive Cancer Center, they host national multidisciplinary conferences and molecular tumor boards. And through their engagement in the EU network of comprehensive cancer centers, the EU-NET-CCC, they are now expanding these forums internationally, starting with Nordic-Baltic collaborations. So, next slide, please. To summarize, why this then matters for Europe. This policy directly contributes to several pillars of Europe's Beating Cancer Plan: childhood cancer, early detection and diagnostics, research and innovation, digital health, and reducing inequality. Because one of the most important outcomes is this: every child in Sweden now has equal access to advanced diagnostic, regardless of where they live and beyond Sweden. The program is linked to collaborations with UK and France and other countries. And we're also starting to enable cross-border data sharing for rare cancers. Because for childhood cancer, no single country has enough data. Europe must act as a shared system. So, as key lessons then, the main lesson is simple. Precision medicine, as already pointed out here in the introduction, is not a technology issue. It's a system design issue that requires coordination, data infrastructure, clinical integration, and international collaboration. And let me conclude with this final point. For children with cancer, access to the right expertise can be life-saving. At the same time, we know that survival still differs both within and between countries, and this is where policy meets reality. So we need to make sure that precision diagnostics are combined with access to shared expertise. And for rare diseases like childhood cancer, Europe, not individual countries, is the right scale. So I think if we're serious about improving outcomes in childhood cancer, we must ensure that precision diagnostics and access to expertise are not pilots, but guaranteed rights for every child. We have shown in Sweden that this is possible with the right policy, investment, and collaborations. I look forward to collaborating further beyond in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ebba. This is a really excellent example to also make it more tangible what it means in practice. I would have a couple of questions for you also for the learning health system approach and this idea of embeddedness, and also how you view the potential of scaling up for everyone, not only for children, but also for adults, because it's a different scale, right? So for children, we have a manageable volume, let's say. So keep those in mind. If we have time in the discussion, I will come back to you on those.
Right. There. And
exactly.
Also with other omics in this as well. Yes.
Precisely. But before that, we go to Matteo, who will give us a perspective. Ebba already talked about the importance of international collaboration. Matteo, we come to you. You sit at the heart of it. So please, over to you.
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me and the European Partnership for Personalized Medicine to this webinar today. I'm very glad to be here to provide an overview of some actions that the PerMed is carrying out to support personalized medicine implementation in healthcare systems. Just an overview of the partnership, which is made by 63 partners coming from 28 countries and 12 regions, and with a total budget of around 375 million euros, of which 100 are by the EU budget, and around 275 come from partners' budget. So more than 85% of this budget goes to third-party support through the different calls that the PerMed is launching yearly, that support research, innovation, and implementation. So the whole value continuum for personalized medicine. The partnership will last 10 years. It has started in November 2023 and will end in October 2033 with 7 years of implementation and 3 years of phasing out. So if you want to learn more, you can visit the website of the partnership, of course. I think that this slide is very, very important. It's the vision of the PerMed. So the vision of the PerMed is to improve health outcomes within sustainable healthcare systems through research, development, innovation, and implementation of personalized medicine approaches for the benefit of patients, citizens, and society. So we do believe that we have to act simultaneously on research, innovation, and implementation to bring forward personalized medicine. But today we will focus on the more implementation approaches. The first example that I would like to bring is twinning calls. So we have funded twinning calls with the purpose of facilitating the transnational transfer and implementation of personalized medicine approaches from one healthcare organizations to the other. And you basically have one twinning donor, which is the creator of the personalized medicine approach. I mean, the adopter, let's say, of the personalized medicine approach, the original one, and then you have two twinning receivers that aim to implement this personalized medicine approach in their healthcare systems. You have to have a consortium made of at least 2 different European member states or associated countries, and these also foster the collaboration between like more advanced countries in personalized medicine and low middle income countries that might need some further help to develop PM in their systems. Each project gets up to 50,000 euros and for a duration of 12 months of projects. And of course, the expected outcomes are to share knowledge, concept, and skills, but ultimately that the receiver develops and applies the personalized medicine solution in their, of course, local setting. Another example is education calls. The purpose of education calls is to support the development of high quality educational content for healthcare professionals. So this goes in the capacity building and training for healthcare professionals. And also here you must have at least 2 different European member states as part of the consortium. And funded projects get up to 50,000 euros and a duration also here of 12 months to develop this education material, which is the expected outcome. So you will see also, if you have a look in the website, you will find the funded projects that develop contents around 6 for personalized medicine. And also, we award best practice in personalized medicine, and we foster the sharing of best practices. And also, not only we award best practices, but we also organize in situ visits in healthcare centers and research centers that have like an outstanding record in personalized medicine. So here I present 3 of the most recent examples. One is childhood cancer in Sweden. So we heard from Ebba just a few minutes ago. Then, for example, a program in Luxembourg on pediatric screening of familial hypercholesterolemia and genetics-based personalized breast cancer prevention and screening. So you see that you have therapy, but you also have personalized prevention showcased. So that's all. I wait for your questions in the question time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matteo. This was really clear and also, I think, inspiring, perhaps for colleagues who have joined us today to also be part of those who are trying to be included in the AP PerMed. I think, importantly, you showed or highlighted 2 of the elements that we have been discussing since the beginning of the webinar that are really fundamental. On the one hand is the organizational embeddedness, and on the other hand, really is the capacity building and skills for professionals. And I think this is one of those things that sometimes when you focus a lot on the technological side of things is maybe forgotten as a really important enabler, but this is really fundamental. And thank you for pointing that out, and good to know that there are initiatives like this, where this idea of learning from each other and having first movers and then second wave adopters really comes together. So thank you very much for that. I'm sure there will be questions also on what's possible under PerMed coming up. So we will come to you again in the discussion in a few minutes. So before that, let's go to Yuri. Yuri, we said in the beginning, this is not a coincidence that we're having the webinar now. We have a lot of movement at EU level with a lot of new regulatory proposals and regulatory files moving forward. One of them, fundamentally, the Biotech Act, that has a lot to do with how personalized medicine is implemented. So we turn to you to tell us more about this and give us the EU perspective. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitra, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I would be happy to take the opportunity to discuss the Biotech Act, which is a package, in fact, that was presented or proposed by the Commission in December of 2025, and is really trying to enforce and strengthen the biotech eco. Okay, so the Biotech Act was a proposal presented by the Commission in December of last year, really with the objective of strengthening the biotech biomanufacturing ecosystem in the EU, which is from research to development to manufacturing to the patient. And I think it's closely connected to the topic of personalized medicine, because biotech, health biotech, is the science or the tool that will help to bring the promise of personalized medicine to the patient, to develop treatments that can really benefit patients. The Biotech Act is, in a way, part of the competitiveness universe. It follows, and I'll go to the next slide. It follows the reports by Mario Draghi, by Enrico Letta, but it would be a false dichotomy to say that competitiveness stands vis-à-vis public health. We think that having a competitive biotech ecosystem in the EU will eventually lead to better treatments for patients, and that's the entire goal or the end goal. About the Biotech Act, like I said, the idea is to build a stronger ecosystem in the EU. And this is because our diagnosis is that our ecosystem today is falling behind with regards to China and the USA, leading to, or potentially leading to, the fact that cutting-edge treatments, the promise also of personalized medicine, will not be valorized in the EU, but rather in China and the USA, and launches of new products, for example, will happen first in China and the USA, and only later in the EU, leading to a negative situation for European patients. And this diagnosis follows from a few numbers. I'll show two of them. The fact that the clinical trials in the EU are going down relatively vis-à-vis China and the USA, but also the fact that investment in development of new products, of biotech products in the EU, is much lower than in China and in the USA. China is steeply rising, so this 14% will become more in the coming years, and the USA has 9 times as much of venture capital in investments in health biotech, which is significant. But we think that we can still turn around the ship, and the reason is that we have strong science in Europe. You can see that the top publications in health biotech in the EU still have a share which is proportionate with USA share and Chinese share. And what we have to do is make the European climate for commercialization of this research stronger. And specifically for health biotech, because as you can see in the second stat, health biotech is a very important sector. It's 80% of the biotech sector, grows twice as fast as the EU economy overall, and it has also a big catalyst effect on the EU economy. So it's about economy, but also the patient. That's something I want to emphasize. Very quickly, the structure of the Biotech Act. So how do we want to close the gap between research and innovation? 2 parts. Regulatory facilitation and simplification. We want to make our regulatory system more agile, more simple, more conducive to innovation. We do this by cutting timelines for clinical trials, for example, but also by introducing regulatory sandboxes to make our regulations more adaptable to new innovations. We also do this in the food sector. And then other part is an industrial policy part, which is mostly focused on strategic projects. So we will try to support projects that build this European ecosystem. This could be also centers of excellence for ATMP, which should boost ATMP development in the EU by connecting clinical research organizations with universities, with hospitals, with industry, with everyone and everything that can be involved to create top-notch ATMP development in the EU. We want to support innovation overall, specifically also biotech and ATMPs via an SPC extension. We want to have everything ready to integrate AI and data as ethical as possible in the life cycle of product development, from clinical trials to further steps. Guardrails are put in place via biosecurity and biodefense provisions. And last but not least, access to finance is very important, because biotech is a very risky business. It has a long time for a return on investment, but we needed to have funds going to the ecosystem, to build the ecosystem, to build companies, to eventually have products for patients in the EU. And therefore, we have a number of initiatives trying to increase capital investment in health biotech. I just wanted to refer to a concept that in the keynote was touched upon. I read there that we need to be system ready for personalized medicines, and I think that the Biotech Act is part of that. It creates the economic, I'd say, and regulatory industrial backbone to fulfill the promise of personalized medicine. That would be a key message I would like to give.
Thank you very much, Jure, you're bridging us very nicely into the next bit, because that's the point where you actually have the chance to also reflect on what you heard from your fellow panelists and presenters. So you started us off. So thank you very much for that. I think really important, we saw after the overall landscape that Julia presented, the importance of national initiative, the importance of existing European initiatives, and now the importance of coming steps that are on the table. So I would like to ask all of our panelists to come back on stage and switch on your cameras, join us. And also at this point, Erica, you as well, with a really challenging task of summarizing what's been going on in the chat. I've been looking with half an eye, and there's a lot of interesting things coming in. So how do you summarize all that? So what's your take?
I don't know if I can summarize it all, but really lively chat, really interesting points being raised by people, and some really good questions. But also lots of people commenting on how inspiring it is, especially the case study from Sweden about how countries working together, and how inspiring that is for everyone. So I just wanted to give that little bit of feedback. But let's also jump into some really, really hard questions. So one question was about whether or not there's a list of essential prognostic tests. So this sort of like personalized medicine, but these prognostic tests at the health system level, which would be equivalent to something like the EML for medicines, the essential medicines list. So is there a similar thing for these sorts of genetic tests? Another big question is, how do we ensure equity and access right across Europe, within the European Union and beyond? Then another really important one is, to what extent are current health technology assessment methods fit for the evaluating precision medicine? So 3 big questions to start you off. I have more, and I'm going back into the chat now, so post your questions if you want to ask something.
Thank you, Erica. So we have basically list of essential tests in the sense, I guess, of system embeddedness of personalized approaches in the way we've done it for other types of treatments before. We have equity, which is always one of the first things that comes to mind. And I think we touched upon it in different areas of the different presentations, but perhaps it would be nice to come back to that. And then finally, the methods for evaluation. Important perhaps to point out, Julia talked about this health technology assessment regulation, which brings in joint clinical assessments for new medicines, and also the types of therapies, and with time also diagnostics that come into play in personalized medicine, and what we need in terms of evidentiary requirements. These are 3 really difficult questions and important questions. So I would say first come, first served. First one to raise their hands to tackle whichever one you want, and then we can see from the first reaction who else comes in accordingly. I see Ebba has unmuted herself already. So Ebba, I don't know if that was intentional because you want to come in.
No, but I can come in.
But you can. All right, then go for it.
Yes. So I think this with the essential diagnosis, it comes back to that we. This is such an evolving field, so we need to combine research, innovation, and clinical routine, and the smarter implementation journeys and the pathways. And I think if we're talking about the European Cancer Plan as a catalyst for change and for collaboration, the Cancer Mission, those initiatives, and I think also what you already pointed out about the Biotech Act are mechanisms to actually help drive that implementation, this type of effort. For instance, also in Sweden, while while our initiative that I shared about from the pediatric perspective came into being before the Beating Cancer Plan was launched, for as an example, it was actually mainly our innovation agency, our government, that took a lot of risk in actually supporting these developments. So as a bottom-up initiative from our research infrastructure, the SciLife Lab, together, then genomic medicine was created to being the implementation engine. And it is a journey to move with the test from research to trials and to the actual implementation. I think clinical trials of different sorts and also repurposing trials are also tools to drive the standardization of what essential tests should be there, how to make them available across regions, countries, and so forth. But you always start somewhere, and testing is also in development. And in our case in Sweden, whether it's adult or in care in general for the cancer care, both pediatric and adults, it's we have care program, groups that are also part of assessing with international evidence, and of course, how do you bring what types of essential diagnostics and medicines should be offered and so forth. Even though there's a lot of own discretion, we want to make it harmonized across the country and available. And so far, coming back to your first question there, Dimitra, I think with children, yes, there's effectively lesser cases, so it's easier perhaps to come together, to harmonize, and also with investments. But also we can't afford any longer imprecise medicine, so we have to see it as the investment case and investing in health and developing. And we don't have whole genome sequencing as routine care for adults, but in routine now we have had more than 500,000 tests performed by now is with gene panels of the most, because it has to be matched to what are there available and also in treating and so on. So, and also the development of other tests being developed. But I know through the joint action on personalized cancer medicine, there are also these pilots on the different types of diagnostic tests and how to evolve with ctDNA and so on. So I think it's again this combination of research and implementation being two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, and I think you bring a really important point that has come out already, but this is a highly dynamic field by virtue of what it is and how it works, right? So it changes basically, the science evolves every day.
And you need them both. The diagnostics and the data is sort of the engine that drives the right treatment to the right person and so on. So you need to change those mechanisms in the health technology assessments and so on. And I think with all the new instruments, I think if we get also now this commission proposal landing a Biotect Act, then we have all the building blocks, but then we have to make sure that we implement them as well.
Correct. And I think with the methodological development linking to health technology assessment, that is also something that is currently ongoing.
Yeah.
Right? So this is something to look forward to.
Yes.
Matteo, we come to you. I see your hand is up, and Ebba, we come back to you later if you want.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I very much agree with what Ebba just said. And I mean, the European Commission has a long history in funding research around personalized medicine and also innovation. And I think that we have become very, very good in funding research and also much better when it comes to funding innovation. Also, getting better in trying to understand the real needs of patients and end users, using reverse technology transfer, for example. So a lot of tools that really allowed us to capture better the needs of the patients and end users. I think that also Yuri stressed this point. I think that what really is needed now is a common framework for clinical trials, and so to allow the development really of innovation towards implementation, because we have a lot of good funders that have found their way to this, let's say, this transnational consortia, but we really need to have this asset also for funding clinical trials. And I believe that clinical trials are really a driving force when it comes to the implementation of personalized medicine, because not only they allow for an easier access to diagnosis and therapy in the field of personalized medicine, but they also build trust in patients can help to have a better science literacy and literacy in genomics and personalized medicine. And they also catalyze healthcare professional training and education on personalized medicine matters. So they're really a strong element for the implementation of personalized medicine. So this would really help us in moving forward.
Thank you, Matteo. Really valid point. Julia, I see your hand. I don't know if you want to come in on clinical trials specifically. I know we've been working on this separately, but please give us your thoughts, even if they're not for clinical trials, that's fine.
I think in this case, the one applied to clinical trials, I would rather apply to HTA, to health technology assessment, and particular question that was raised in the chat. There are European funded initiatives that are actually working towards developing more, I can't say standardized, of course, list of how HTA for personalized medicine should evolve and what national assessors should look at. But however, really developing methodology around it, really developing the definitions around the uncertainty points and etc. I was trying to pull out the link, but my browser unfortunately crashed. However, if you look at the policy brief, we do mention that health economics for personalized medicine consortium that has been active in really developing the methodology around HTA. And of course, now with HTA regulation and the first joint clinical assessments coming out and scientific consultations that are going in full motion and supported by EMA and other, of course, heads of medicines agency in Europe, we, I think, are now moving more towards not only generating the knowledge around how evidence should be shaped in these personalized medicine approaches, but also actually application of it. We need to remember that the capacity in different member states is different. So therefore, I see the promise of HTR really living or started to live itself now and its promise. And I will probably give floor to other panelists.
Okay. Thank you, Julia. And maybe we come back to you if we have time. Erica, I'm mindful of time. We don't have that much time. I see there's more questions in the chat. There seems to be a lot of interest on around the European health data space, if I'm catching the
absolutely
the
yes,
drift, right?
yes. Basically, I think this is one for Yuri, but it's how does the European health data space fit with the European Biotech Act? So, how do these things sort of work together? And sort of more broadly, does precision medicine run the risk of actually failing to treat the whole patient in their context, especially with the rise of multimorbidity and sort of mental health as a factor? And how do we integrate the data and collect the data on the whole of the patient and not just the genomics? Or is that not really an issue? Okay. So over to you. Big questions, hard questions.
We would need, yes, another hour, it feels like, to just discuss
You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you, yes. So I don't know, again, we do the same. If you want to pick up one of those elements and come in, we're not going to manage everything. I don't know if you want to come in more on the regulatory side of things, and then colleagues, the rest of you, as before, raise your hands, and we'll come to you. Yuri, over to you.
Yes, I think it's a good question because it's a question that we are still reflecting on as well, and it will depend on the implementation. But I think the logic is in a way that if you look at the Biotech Act, the main goal is to help European companies to develop treatments and products that will help European patients in the end. So we are looking at the stages of early clinical trials, drug development, and then enabling a product to attract investment, to go to the market, to pay for expensive phase 3 clinical trials. That's the crux of the Biotech Act. So then if you think about the EHDS, how can this help? I think the response is that drug development increasingly will become data-driven. And for that, we need good data. We need trustworthy data. We need qualitative data. And there the EHDS might come in. So I think we need to use the EHDS as an infrastructure to boost the competitiveness of this mostly SME biotech ecosystem, help them for clinical development, help them for evidence generation. But I also realize this is a very high level response. We do have some hooks in the Biotech Act to this. We have high impact strategic projects on data quality. We have the integration of AI in the life cycle of products, so for which the EMA will have a guidance. And those will also have to, I'd say between parentheses, touch on the EHDS, because again, the EHDS is the backbone for that.
Thank you, Jeroen. Perhaps one reflection for me, looking also a little bit in the chat, these questions about implementation and when personalized medicine actually unfolds its promise if we don't measure whether it works for patients. We have the secondary use of data in the European health data space as well, which is what will help us also monitor and understand implementation along the lines of what the benefits are of specific approaches. So there is a connection in that sense as well that comes in from the other side. So it's to drive innovation, but it's also to be able to understand implementation and who benefits and how exactly. So then we can see what we need to do next if we want to amplify or change at a different way. Colleagues, we have 3 minutes, so only very burning final thoughts if you have them. Otherwise, I would say we have heard really inspiring and very hopeful inputs today, at least from my side with my innovation, implementation, and health system strengthening side. This is something that I really look forward to observing over the next few years and to supporting as much as possible. So thank you very much, all of you, for your inputs. We will close the webinar here. We will make it available on YouTube for those who want to go and take another look. And we will meet again next week, not with all of us here. Of course, you're very welcome to join if you want from our panelists. On digital health on the 24th. This is our first webinar on the State of Health initiative. This year, it will look at the synthesis report and what we found across countries. And we really look forward to seeing you. It's not a Tuesday, it's not a Thursday. It's a Wednesday next week, so the 24th. So please join us for that discussion as well, linking to personalized medicine in a certain way as well. So thank you very much for today. To our panelists, to our participants, and we will see you very soon again.